Passionate, driven, enthusiastic, euphoric. This is who we are as entrepreneurs. But how we leverage these incredible attributes to dream and build businesses that scale and grow is what this podcast is all about. Hello, I'm attorneypreneur Josh Brown, and welcome to Franchise Euphoria. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Franchise Euphoria. Josh Brown here. Well, I am super excited for today's tip of the day because it's something that I get asked all the time, and it's a really tricky area to fully understand in franchising, and that is how to know when to pull the trigger. You know, franchising, unlike starting your own business, it's really, really, really important that you take the time to go through the process to figure out what franchise is right for you. Now, I'm not saying it's not important if you're just starting your own business to do the same thing, but when you buy a franchise, you're buying a business that you are signing on for, on average, for 10 to 15 years. Now, some are shorter, 5, some are longer, 20. But the point being that when you buy a franchise, you're in it for the long haul. So you better be sure that it is right for you. And really, how do you know? How do you know when it's right? I mean, I speak to people who say, you know, I went through this process. I worked with a broker. I did this. I researched this. I looked at my experiences. I think I'm making the right decision, but I don't know for sure. Well, today I'm going to give you 6 things to consider that will help you make the determination as to whether or not you are ready to pull the trigger. Because the fact remains, you're never going to feel 100% comfortable, right? I mean, if you weren't a little bit nervous, if you weren't a little bit anxious, then I'd be worried about you because you're about to get involved in a brand new business. You're about to go into a new endeavor. And so there's going to be those thoughts of, what if this doesn't work? What am I going to do? But there's a process to go through and there's a threshold to cross before you've really done your due diligence the right way. So here are 6 things that if you follow these 6 steps, trust me, you will be way ahead of the vast majority of people who what they do when they buy a franchise. And by doing this, the whole purpose is you will uncover things, potential red flags, things that you may not have thought about, issues that may come up that will help you through the decision-making process. So step number 1 is, have you met with a broker or a consultant, an attorney, and an accountant? So here's the deal on this. You might be saying, well, if I'm meeting with a broker and a consultant on a franchise, shouldn't I just wait to meet with an attorney and accountant till after I decided to go ahead and buy the franchise? I don't believe so. I mean, I think there might be people out there who would suggest otherwise, but here's my thinking on this, and I've done a number of these. So when you meet with a broker or consultant, the vast majority of them get paid by the franchisor company if you purchase a franchise within their network of franchises. So while you're not necessarily paying them, they are getting paid for recommending and for you following through on the purchase of a franchise. And oftentimes they're getting paid a substantial amount. And I don't have a problem with that. But I think that you just have to understand that you're not getting complete objectiveness when you're getting their advice. I'm not suggesting that they're not giving you a valid opinion and they're not giving you good advice, but there is money to be had on the other end of the transaction. So I think it's important to go through the process with a broker or consultant. You can either go through somebody who is free, where they get paid by the franchisor, or I know some very good ones. Joel Labava being one, based out of Cleveland, calls himself the franchise king. And you actually pay him for consulting, but he doesn't get paid on the back end by any franchisor. So it's important to go to a broker or a consultant and really go through the process. They will go through the process of usually asking you a bunch of questions, seeing what kind of financial position you're in, talking about your history, your work experiences, and they will try, at least the good ones will try to whittle you down to a handful of franchises. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people stop at that point. Once they've gone through that process once with the broker and consultant and they get it down to 5, they just stop their search and they focus completely on those 5 until they've made a decision. Well, what I recommend is after you've done that, now it's time to contact an attorney who's got a focus in franchising. I know one of the things that I do is, people will come to me at different stages in the process. Some people will come when they've already decided, hey, this is the franchise I'm going to buy. And Josh, I just want you to review the FDD, review the franchise agreement. And that's fine. I'll do that. But I'll also get a number of people who'll come who will say, yeah, I think I want to buy this franchise, but I'm not sure. And so what I'll do at that point is I'll do a consultation with them. Now, it's a paid consultation, but you're going to get objective advice, and we're going to spend an hour to an hour and a half with each other. We're going to go over everything that you went over with your broker or your consultant. And then we're going to take a look at some things that I do, a process that I go through that I think combined with what you do with your consultant will give you a little bit of a different perspective and will, to some extent, either further the proof in your own mind that this is a good franchise to buy, or may raise some questions for you. So I think it's important to meet with a consultant, meet with a broker. I think it's then important to search out and find your franchise attorney. I also think at this time, as you're moving down this process, you need to have in mind who your accountant is. Because if you're buying a franchise new, if you're buying a resale, whatever the case may be, you definitely need an accountant not only to run the numbers on your end, but also as you're looking through the FDDs and you're trying to get a real good handle on the financial position of the franchisor, you really need your own accountant on your side to help you with this. Trust me, it'll be money well spent. Number 2, you need to have a crystal clear understanding of the underlying business model of the business you're buying. I talk about a lot on this show. I talk about a lot in general, but you don't buy a franchise, you don't buy a business because you like what they do. You buy a franchise, you buy a business because you can make money with it, and while doing that, you enjoy what you do. So there's a big distinction there. You don't buy a business because you like what they do. You buy a business because you can make money with it and you like what you do with it. So the only way you can know if you can make money from a business is to understand how the business makes money. And to understand that, you need to understand the entire process. You need to see, or at least have an understanding of the profits and losses associated with the business's balance sheets. You need to understand what it is that in the process that this business goes through to actually make money. Number 3 is you need to understand your own personality. You need to know what you like, what you don't like. You need to know what environments you thrive in, what environments you don't necessarily thrive in. You need to know by looking throughout your history of experiences, life experiences, business experiences, and whatnot, what it is that, where have you been where you have done well, right? And so you want to put yourself in those positions. Classic example is if you hate going to the mall or you hate going shopping, then why would you buy a retail franchise, right? So if you have to know what you like doing, because whatever franchise you purchase, you're going to be married to this thing. You're going to be living it day in and day out. And oftentimes you're going to be at the location, if there is a physical location, quite a bit. So you need to find enjoyment with that or you will get burned out. Number 4, you got to have a handle on the money and other revenue sources. And what do I mean by that? You've got to know going in, what is the ramp up period for this particular franchise? And no franchisor is going to tell you that. But if you talk to enough franchisees and if you do enough research, you can get a pretty good idea, especially on a build out, a brick and mortar type franchise. Okay, what's really the time frame from the time I sign this franchise agreement to when I get this up and going? to when I actually start turning over a profit each month? What is that time frame? And then multiply it by 2. Okay. Once you've done that, you need to be sure that you have enough capital to get you through that time period. If you don't, you are going to put yourself under unnecessary stress. You're already going to be stressed starting a new business, but you need to be sure that you have enough money. There is nothing that kills any business quicker than cash flow or lack thereof. So you need to make sure that you have an absolute handle on the money, how you're going to get the money, who you have access to get money from, and you need to really consult with a financial advisor to see if it makes sense. I see a lot of people these days who are looking at Benetrends and Guidant Financial, and I think it's Trident. And these are businesses that have a special focus on doing what's called ROBs, where essentially they're going in and they're pulling from your retirement accounts, from your 401ks and so forth, even before you're traditionally allowed to get it. And they found essentially a loophole in the tax system. They've been doing this for 30 plus years, basically where you're going in and taking from your 401k and then investing it in your business, and then also having the additional capital to have as working capital with your business. There's a lot of people doing that. And I'm not here to say whether it's right or wrong, but what I would say is I would talk to your financial advisor about that as well, because all those years that you've worked in your corporate environment or in whatever position you were, and you've been able to save up all that money, do you really want to take it all and bet it on a franchise? Boy, if you do, then I just want to be real careful as to what franchise am I getting into and what's my plan. That ties into number 5, which is you have to have an idea of sort of what your goal is in this overall process. Many people get excited about buying a franchise and they only think about the one franchise. They don't stop to think about, is this one of many that I want to buy? What if I'm successful beyond what I think with this franchise? What do I want to do with this? Do I want to look at multiple locations, multiple units? I mean, today in franchising, it's very, very popular, and a lot of franchisors want to have multi-unit owners. It's better for the franchisor because they know what they're getting in an operator. And quite frankly, it's better for you in a lot of instances as the franchisee because you can make more money that way. You can utilize economies of scale, and you can have multiple locations so that if one doesn't do particularly as well as the other, you have the other to count on. So you really want to go into franchising and sort of have your game plan. You don't have to know exactly what you want to do, but I want you to at least have thought about it, to at least say, hey, is my goal to own 1 Subway or is my goal to own 50 Subways? And if my goal is to own 50 Subways, how do I get there? What's the best way for me to try to get there? Number 6, and this is not last because it's least important. This is so important. You have to speak to a lot of franchisees, and you have to speak to former franchisees. So here's the deal. If you're buying a system or you're looking to buy a system where it's been around for a good period of time, there are going to be former franchisees and there are going to be current franchisees. What you need to do is find the current franchisees that are in as close of a geographic proximity to where you're going to operate as possible, and then work your way out. So in other words, reach out to the people who are in the same state as you. Reach out to the people who are in the neighboring states, and then work your way out. You simply cannot talk to enough franchisees. And if you're curious, okay, well, what do I ask them? You can actually go to my website. You can search. I can't even remember which blog it was. I did it so long ago, but I have a blog I did on, I think, 10 questions or more than 10 questions that you can ask franchisee owners when you meet them about the system. But the idea is you need to get a grasp on what it's actually like to run the business. You need to talk to them. And I prefer if you meet them in person. I know geographically that may not be possible, but it's always nice to talk to somebody in person because you can tell if they're BSing you a little bit easier than over the phone. And you really want to have a crystal clear idea of how long have these people been in business? What's it been like for them? When did they get to cash flow positive? When were they able to make back their franchise investment? How have they enjoyed the system? How have they enjoyed working with the franchisor? What has that relationship been like? This is so important. You can't skip it over. The second part of that is you need to talk to former franchisees. I mean, the franchise disclosure document is going to have a list in there of franchisees and former franchisees. And it's imperative that not only you talk to the people on those lists, but if there's even other franchisees and you're able to find out about them, which you should be able to if you just ask, you want to find out, why did they get out of the system? I mean, heck, it could just be that life circumstances took over and it had nothing to do with the underlying business or business model. Or it could be that they felt like they were sold a bill of goods, or, it could be a host of a lot of different things. The important thing is you need to talk to former franchisees and you need to ask them, hey, what's the deal here? Why'd you guys get in? Why'd you get out? Did you make any money? When you got out, was this a situation where you were able to resell your franchise, or was the franchise terminated? Why did you get into the franchise in the first place? And what have you done since? So I think you need to go through that entire process. And if you follow these 6 steps, I can tell you are going to be ahead of the game. And once you go through this, there's no short-sighting it. You have to go through each of the 6 steps. You will feel much better about your purchase at the end of the day. So in any event, that's my quick, or I guess not so quick, tip of the day. It's been almost 17 minutes, but it's such an important part of buying a franchise. And actually, one of the things I'm working on is I'm putting a product together that's going to help franchise buyers or potential franchisees really be able to buy a product where I'm going to put some videos and other resources together where it's going to walk you through exactly what you need to do to buy a franchise. And I'd be curious on your end if this is something that you'd be interested in. I'm getting a lot of people who are asking about it, so I assume that it is. But as always, I'd love to hear from you. And coming up this Thursday is another fantastic interview. And until then, I wish you nothing but success in your business and life. And if you have any questions whatsoever, do not hesitate to reach out to me. Thanks again, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks for being with us today on the Franchise Euphoria podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to go to iTunes and provide a review. Also, please remember that although Josh Brown is a licensed and practicing attorney, nothing contained in this podcast should be construed as legal advice, because it is not. The information contained in this podcast is general and educational in nature, and none of it should be relied upon as legal advice. That being said, if you have questions for Josh and would like to contact him, please email him at josh@franchiseeuphoria.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you tune in to our next weekly episode.